This is John Martinka, and welcome to the Getting the Deal Done podcast. My special guest today is Jonathan Bennett. Jonathan is an executive leadership coach. He works with companies of all sizes, but specializes in the, we'll call it the middle market, smaller, mid-sized firms, their CEOs, their owners, and he is industry agnostic when he does that. So, welcome, Jonathan.
Thanks so much. Great to be here, John.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about you and your background and all of that that got you in the position of being a leadership coach.
Yeah, for sure. So I think I've had a kind of wide-ranging career. I moved up through corporate communications and strategy work, and I found myself on the C-suite of a large regional hospital here in Canada, where I live. And it was an amazing experience. They're very complex organizations, hospitals, and especially in Canada, where they're government controlled. We have at the hospital I was at, there were four trade unions and 3,000 employees. So really a pretty complex organization, 24/7, obviously. And so I enjoyed a lot of learning through that process. We built a new hospital, so there's a massive capital project that I was involved in. And I got to the end of that journey and just realized that I felt really tapped out and that it was time for the next thing for me. And I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do, but I had a sense that it might be consulting. And so I went to work with a dear old friend of mine who has a management consulting firm in Vancouver, in British Columbia, Canada. And I hung out with her for about 6 months. She really taught me the ropes. I added some value and came away from that experience knowing that the next thing for me was to set up a firm, and that's what I did. So our niche was mid-sized and large nonprofits and charities across Canada. We were a strategy shop, and we also ended up getting into middle management training as well. So it was a great run. We became a B Corp, and I sold the company about 2 years ago. So it was a sort of a 10-year ownership journey for me. And these days, I help people like where I was that are, owners of their own company and are thinking about how do they grow, how do they expand, how do they get out of the hard parts. Can be pretty lonely being a leader, and
Yeah.
so there's some of the things that I spend my days doing now.
Yeah. It can be lonely. That's why you have a lot of these groups like Vistage and others and
Yeah,
people like you. So
yeah.
what are the challenges that these owners face, especially ones like you who worked in the corporate setting and all of a sudden I'm at the top of the heap of my own business and it's my money and my responsibility.
Yeah, for sure. Nothing focuses the mind like when it's your own money, and the buck stops with you. And I think a lot of us come into ownership, and because we see the freedom for ourselves, we see the ability to be able to create, and it's a very creative act, growing a company, especially if you're a founder. It's maybe a slightly different journey if you're buying something that exists, but even then, reshaping it in the image and in the way that you want to build it is, a really creative thing to do. And there's a lot of pressure. Most of us have done lots of things before we become an owner of a business, but we've never done that before. And it's a very particular set of things that you need to do. Leadership for sure, and motivating staff and hiring and growing, but not too fast. And making sure that you're thinking about the future, but also making sure that today and tomorrow are good too. These things are, there's a lot of pressure involved, and so they're the common things that I show up with. I'd say, if I was to sort of pick the top two or three, people problems are definitely something that everybody struggles with. Whether it's just inspiring people, motivating them, delegating, all of that kind of stuff. Um, I think succession planning is a really big issue for owners thinking about their future. And I suppose the third one is just being able to kind of put the scaffolding around you to be able to do the work well and to be able to grow as a leader. And they're the things that I think people mostly come to me for.
Okay. Well, let's jump into the succession part of it. So I work
Mhm.
in that field with people
Yeah.
selling their businesses and uh w- you know, take an owner, CEO, and they're going to realize at some point that they're going to need to exit. And some of them will actually think about planning for it. Not all, but some will. And they say 3 to 5 years out, I would like to be, moving on in life. How do you help them get ready on the emotional side, the soft stuff?
Yeah, and I like the way you've kind of packaged that. I think that for a lot of owners, they think about the deal, attracting the right buyer, packaging it out, getting their company ready for sale, and all that that can entail. And I think there's lots of people like you and other folks that you've had on the show that know a lot about that. And I think the thing that and where the value is that I can add is it is an emotional journey also that you go on. And that is a less knowable thing ahead of time. I think that there's lots of folks that know how you go through the steps of preparing your business for sale, and there's some transactions involved, and there's negotiation, and there's legal, and all of the pieces, and obviously it can be very complex, and not to minimize it. But the thing that I think people don't really think about until they've gone through it is that often it's become a part of your identity being an owner of a business. It really is how you show up in the world, whether you're at a Christmas party or a function and people say, "What do you do?" I mean, business owners talk passionately and they think about their businesses 24 hours a day and they wake up at 2 in the morning thinking about it. And you can't just flick a switch when you've sold your business, even if it's your payday, even if it's what you've been really hoping to achieve, even if you achieve that, the day after the sale, you're still a human and you still have to, be in the world. And how do you describe what it is that you do? And so I liken the process of letting go to one of grief. And I think it's a metaphor that's apt. It might sound a bit rich, but where there was nothing, you founded something, you built something. It's, kind of like your baby, and you've, attracted all of these other people and resources and capital, and brought it all together. And that's all you've been thinking about and doing for the last however many years. And now you get this sale. And even if you've got it, I mean, it can be harder if you've in your deal structured that you've got to hang around a while, which is often the case to make
Hmm.
sure everything is smooth. Um, you have to be available and be participate in somebody else doing it differently than you would have done it. That's also very emotionally difficult to participate in.
Yeah.
And so all of those things come to bear, and I think that there's an element of imagine the old Kubler-Ross curve, like there's some denial, there's some anger, there's some disbelief, and eventually we come to some level of acceptance, but it's not a linear, smooth curve. You have good days, you have bad days, good weeks, good months, but things come and go, and I just think that allowing an owner to just understand and name and be supported through that process is super important. And it's really intimate and quite powerful work I'm able to do.
Yeah. It surely is because we see it every so often. We call it seller remorse. They can't imagine being without their baby. And
That's
I
a beautiful, beautiful description. Yeah.
one prospective client right now, he's owned his business a long time and he owns the real estate where they are. And he says, well, when I sell it, I'll discount the rent, but I want to keep my office. So he needs that, that cord to the business that has been him for so long. So what you're talking about is very, very true. It's a real thing. Uh,
Yeah.
Flip it around. They're not exiting. Work-life balance. What
Yeah.
you see there? How do you work with that?
It's also a very tough one. Uh there's a level of I just have a lot of workaholics that show up. It's how they define themselves. They genuinely get pleasure from it, but there is pain and hurt that is caused in other areas of their life if they're not worrying and thinking about the balance and achieving some balance. We all know stories of owners and founders and CEOs whose marriages fall apart, whose kids are estranged because they're married to the job. And I think there's a whole new generation of folks that are coming through that are more tuned to the potentials of these things coming. But I'm also seeing younger leaders and younger owners falling into the same traps. These are highly motivated, A-type driven folks that are in it for lots of good reasons. Yeah, they want to make some good dough. They want to make a difference in the world. They want to build something. They want to create. It needs to be creative. They want to draw people around them and build positive workplace cultures, all of that. And if that's your ambition, if that's you, if that sounds like you, then you can only be your best if you show up with the energy that it requires. And that means that you can't be on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. You do need time away. You need time to recharge. You need time to be able to be interested and inspired by different things in life other than your business.
Okay, so you made a good point there. And when you talk about the drivers and the workaholics, how many of them do a lot of things below their pay grade?
Yeah, like you mean when they're working kind of
Yeah,
in the
when they're
business and not
working.
on the business? Yeah, I mean, so a lot of times and not always, but like a lot of times you'll end up owning a business. Like I was talking to somebody this morning who has sold their business to like it's a construction company and they sold it to an employee who's the lead carpenter. And so, fascinating story, amazing that, we found somebody that already loved the business, already knew the business intimately. But this is somebody who is struggling to be a leader. They're a doer. They know how to build things and they know better than anybody else, and it's their comfy place. So they're gonna, at every stage, want to be on the job site with the guys doing the stuff. And you get it, right? What they don't want to be thinking about is, how's cash flow? Are we building a good pipeline? What happens when we run out of work in 9 months? So they're really, that's CEO work, and only a CEO and an owner can do that kind of work. So I think, your question's a really important one. It's that, the thing that, the old line about the thing that got you here won't get you there. I think that's really what we're talking about. The thing that made you an excellent, whatever it is, in your profession, isn't the job of an owner. It's not the job of a CEO to be technically expert as businesses start to scale. I mean, for really, really tiny businesses, of course, that's fine. You're doing and you're leading. But as you get bigger, you literally can't. And so it's good that you know the business intimately and deeply. You can help other people problem solve. You can train them up. I mean, that's how you're going to create scale, especially maybe in service-based business. But it really will be the death of you if you don't let go of the doing as well as the leading.
Yeah. Yeah, you've given examples of both extremes, and the owner who can't get away, and whoever
Yeah.
takes it over won't do as well as he or she did, even though the
Yeah.
company may be three times as big and it's a different skill set.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and also avoiding working on those things to grow the business because you're doing the things in the business. Yeah, great examples. Uh, Talk about using a board of directors, and what what benefits a business and business owner can get from that.
Yeah, thanks for the question, John. I'm kind of a governance nerd. I sit on, I'm a chartered director and I sit on two privately held boards and an advisory board as well. And so I think when designed well, a board of directors or an advisory board is an amazing tool. It's great because you have a bunch of people that have different skill sets. Maybe they've got some skin in the game. Maybe they're just hired. But whatever the circumstances are around their attachment, they're in it. And they're in it with you and they're going to walk your journey with you. they're going to be both cheerleaders on one hand and some of your harshest critics on the other, because they love you and they care about you and they want this business to be great. So they'll pick you up when you're down and they'll question you when you're looking like you're thriving. And that kind of support network around you, it's the long-term attachment of a board of directors that are active and engaged and useful that can make a board a really tremendous thing. And that's not to say anything about the things that I know about preparing for sale, for example, or attracting, you know, uh, maybe new capital and new investment. A board can be excellent for all those other things like, a Rolodex and networks, of course. But if I'm just thinking about being a leader, a board is some really great scaffolding.
Okay. So, over the last 5 years, we've had a lot of changes uh, from the obviously from the pandemic, and
Yeah.
we have a, hybrid workforce in many cases. Not for probably 80% of people who have to be in the restaurant or the store or the construction site, but
Yeah.
for the white collar jobs.
Mhm.
Uh, and we have, uh, as you mentioned, a little different attitude about working and being a workaholic from primarily, but not all, younger workers. And I'm on the board of a company, and I know the COO commented recently, says, some of these people just don't want to work.
Yeah.
And so what do you do to work with these companies on a good culture? How to get that out and get everyone working together at those things. It's tough if the owner wants things done one way, but a bunch of important employees want it different.
Yeah, this comes up all the time. And I think it's important, when it's often a Gen X leader, somebody that's kind of around my age, maybe they're in their 50s or 60s, and they're going to say something exactly like what your COO example just said. Like they don't want to work anymore. And when I dig into that, what they're really saying is the work culture that I grew up in was different than the culture that exists now.
Hmm.
And I played by one set of rules. My mentors, who were, baby boomers, were suck it up, buttercup, and, like work hard and get her done and all of that stuff. And that was a kind of culture that happened in corporate life. And they were the rules that the current leaders played by. And P.S., they had to wait a long time for that generation to decide to move on and retire and leave some of those big jobs or sell their companies. So they kind of waited a long time, and now they're in those jobs and they're looking down at the workforce who have a really different orientation to work. They've grown up with psychological tools and ways of describing themselves that weren't previously out there. They're going to talk to you about boundaries. They're going to talk to you about safety, psychological safety in the workplace. These are, reasonably new to corporate life, and they're still finding their way. And so there's a kind of rub that's happening generationally across the workforce. And so when I'm helping folks, it begins with a little bit of tough love, which is, look, you can either be pissed off at it or you can get curious about it. You can say, how's it working? Like if just barking orders isn't landing, if they're not working the way you used to work, then what are you going to do? Pack up your toys and go home? No, you need to solve the problem. So how do you create workplace culture that is going to attract and retain the very best because they can be loyal, they're fiercely good workers, but you need to create the kind of company culture that they want to attach to. And that's on you as a leader. And, some of my clients don't love hearing that, but, the opposite won't get you there. So digging in and finding those high performers and finding out what motivates them and what they need at work is really your job. And, I enjoy helping open up some minds and allowing, our current kind of crop of C-suite leaders to be able to think a little bit more about what this next generation wants. They want connection to purpose. They want safety. They want people to care that they're at their company, and they have a lot more choices. I mean, people don't just work at one place for their whole career anymore. They bounce around a lot, and that's important to them as well. So there's some of the things that come to my mind.
Yeah, especially when there's a uh, high demand for workers in an industry. Accounting is a
Absolutely.
good one because there's such a shortage of accountants. Eh,
Oh, absolutely.
But
Yeah.
I've seen what you're talking about. It really can manifest itself in a company that, they thrive on utilization rates. In fact, when they're hourly billing, law, accounting, engineering, and other
Yeah.
type services.
Professional services
And
firms
then if
really
you go,
struggle with this.
how
Yeah.
do you, what are you doing if you're not billing 30 hours a week or 28 or whatever your goal is?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I have engineering firm, an architect firm. Uh, these are the exact things we talk about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's never ending. It's always there.
Yeah, because it's churn. And just when you've created, a good team culture, they move on. They
Yeah.
get the big new opportunity somewhere else. And so that work never ends of
Yeah.
creating the kind of work that you want, workplace you want.
So let me ask you a personal business question.
Mm.
You were running hospitals, and yeah, I can see how you could get burned out on that. You started your own firm, you built it up, and had a bunch of employees and hundreds of clients. Why did you decide to sell? And as I understand it, you sold to management.
Yeah, I did a management buyout. So a couple things. The first was I recognized in myself the early signs of my mind starting to wander. And and this was a sort of like I was just paying attention to kind of like where my interests were. Like I'm somebody that likes building things, I like growing things, and I had achieved that. We had a pretty thriving professional services firm and a good workplace culture. And I was not thinking about like how do I take it to some really big, huge firm. That was not what I wanted to do. And so I was thinking, I wonder if I'm coming to the end of my useful time here. I also have witnessed many leaders stay way too long. And it's easy to do. It's easy to get attached to the money and to the title and to the social kind of capital that comes along with being a leader. And it's a hard thing to walk away from. But you can do a lot of damage to your firm, to your personal brand, to your relationships by staying too long, especially if you're kind of resting on your laurels. And so I think I had I had helped two boards in particular with a very long-standing leader and helping them exit somebody that just wouldn't and needed to. And so I think that was on my mind a lot. And I guess sort of thirdly, I had a superstar that was coming through. And I was on holiday. I'll tell you the exact moment it happened. I was on holiday in Dublin, in Ireland, and I was going, we were walking and talking, my wife and I said, I think I need to kind of get organized to leave. And she said, yeah, you better, because, you can't just give 2 weeks notice. You're going to need a plan, when I started to talk through that plan, it really included, the person ultimately that bought the company. And I realized like she was it. Like she was what was going to be my exit. And I couldn't help but spin like, what happens if one of my clients just hires her away from me? It's so easy to happen. And she I don't know what her hopes and dreams are. So I came back from that vacation and decided to sort of address this problem head on. We went through some formal succession planning at the company, and then privately I started to have some deep conversations with her. And I wasn't quite ready to leave, and she wasn't quite ready to buy it. So it's sort of the timing was a bit kind of perfect. We each had some sort of tension there that we had to address. And over the course of the next 2 years, we put in place a transition plan and a way for her to buy me out. And I'm really grateful for it. The company is often doing new and interesting things. It's thriving. I went on an emotional journey. It was hard for sure to give this thing away. I still find it hard. I find myself clicking on the website every now and then and going, "Oh man." But I don't regret it at all for a minute. She is, just a first-rate leader and somebody who I just feel really proud to have handed this thing that I created to her to go and be some new, different thing that she's pushing it on to be. So
Okay. So I got one final question.
mhm.
Uh, in your experiences of your own company and then working with other owners, what are the top, whether it's one, two, or three things you've seen them do that have improved their team, their company, their culture?
I think the first is to be listen for its own sake. So I think that there's just a lot of very solution oriented leaders out there, and listening, going on a listening tour, just being attentive and curious and patient with people that work for you, not trying to solve their problems, to just listen for to allow them to be heard is a superpower when it comes to leadership. And it is hard to be a good listener. It's hard. But you can learn. It's a skill that you can learn. And when I teach listening skills, which sounds super soft, but people behave differently when they feel like they've been listened to. And that is one of the things that the next generation wants. They don't need to make the decisions, but they do need to know that they were heard.
Yeah.
And so, I teach some pretty simple skill building things like mirroring and just feeding back to people what you just heard. And like those things can really change the dynamic of a leader. So that's definitely one. Um, I think that decision making is something that comes up every day for me. I'm definitely somebody that helps people make decisions. I have a fairly logical mind and I scenario plan quite quickly. So I'll spin out the likely scenarios of a set of circumstances in front of me quite quickly. And the value there is that sometimes when you're the leader and you're just in it too deep in the personalities and everything, you get things just get muddied and muddled for you. And so working with somebody that can say, what I'm hearing is three different things. Option A, you do A, B, C, and D, and E, B, and then we go out down here. Like, which one sounds more attractive to you at the moment? Well, I'm kind of drawn to the middle one. Great, let's game it out. And we do. And from there we can move from muddled and cloudy to, okay, we got a logical plan here. And you can almost like feel their body with a sense of relief because this thing has been weighing on them. And often the thing that's been hardest for them to deal with has been a human relational thing. They don't want to let somebody down. They don't want to disappoint somebody. Sometimes it's themselves. And that's really what the kind of work I do. So for us to think about a couple of the top ones, there's certainly two that are really, really common for me.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Jonathan. How do people get hold of you?
Yeah, for sure. I'm really active on LinkedIn. So if you want to find me on LinkedIn, I imagine maybe in the show notes you could put a
Yeah.
link. And I answer DMs. I like to spend an hour with anybody that is reaching out to me and is curious about coaching. So I do lots and lots of trial calls for folks. And if I'm not the right person for you, I have a big network, so I might be able to help you. And I also have a website, which is clearlythen.com, where you can watch me on podcasts and learn lots about what I offer and what I do.
Okay. Well, thank you again, Jonathan Bennett, a leadership coach based in Toronto. I appreciate your being on.
Thanks so much, John. It's been a pleasure.